Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. I am Harry with you, and today we're delving into a truly unsettling case. The 2008 case of Emma Jangestig shocked Europe and stands as one of the most brutal in Swedish forensic history. Despite some arguing that the perpetrator was insane and pushing to close the case due to insufficient evidence, the true nature of the criminal was revealed during the trial. Emma Jangestig, born February 16, 1985 in Stockholm, spent most of her youth there. Raised in a modest family as the younger of two sisters, she married her high school sweetheart, Nicklas, at 19. They were both young, and by the time of their marriage, Emma was expecting a child. At 20, Emma became a mother to Max, and a year and a half later, she had a daughter named Saga. Despite their two children, the couple struggled with the demands of family life, often arguing over small issues and finding no common ground. Shortly after Saga's birth, they decided to part ways. Then came the difficult and painful issue of child custody. Nicholas wanted not only to support the children financially, but also to be actively involved in their lives and upbringing. Emma was open to this, but soon she started a new romantic relationship. She moved to a small town called Aruga, about 150 kilometers from Stockholm, to be with her new partner and took the children with her. Nicholas opposed this move as he wanted to see his kids daily. The former spouses repeatedly clashed in court over this matter, and Nicholas even threatened Emma, prompting her to report him to the police. The conflict couldn't be resolved amicably, and both parents began to fight for sole custody. Emma's new partner was Tony Hellberg, whom she met online. They quickly bonded, and their relationship became romantic. Tony wasn't put off by the fact that Emma, at 23, had two children from her previous marriage. He was eager to start a family and embrace them as his own. The couple initially lived in a small house that Tony had inherited, but once they decided to marry, they moved to a larger home with enough space for each child to have their own room. At that time, Tawny had a stable job with a good salary, while Emma focused on raising the children and managing the home. With her background in design, she planned to return to her profession in the future. They had planned a wedding for the summer of 2008, but those plans were not meant to be. On March 17, 2008, a typical Monday, Tawny left for work early, leaving Emma at home with their 3-year-old son Max and 1.5-year-old daughter Saga. In the evening, as Emma prepared dinner, she awaited Tawny's return and chatted online with her sister Katarina about a gift for their parents' upcoming wedding anniversary. At around 6:30 p.m., Tawny called Emma to let her know he was running late and said they could start dinner without him. After the brief call, Emma resumed her chores, fed the kids, and then returned to her computer to continue messaging Katarina. At 7:07 p.m., their conversation was abruptly cut off mid-sentence. Katarina found this odd as she saw Emma typing but never sending the message. 5 minutes later, Katarina called Emma but got no response. She then reached out to Tawny to check on the situation. Tawny, who was on his way home, assured Katarina that everything was likely fine and that Emma might be preoccupied with the children. He said Emma would call back as soon as she could. When Tawny arrived home, he was startled to find the front door open. Inside, he noticed a mess, assuming it was from the children playing. However, he soon spotted brown stains and realized with horror that it was blood. He called out for Emma and the kids, but no one answered. In the hallway, he found what he initially thought was a doll lying in an unnatural position. As he got closer, he realized it was Saga, lying in a pool of blood with her head and face severely disfigured. Nearby, her brother lay in a similarly horrific condition with a fractured skull. Their mother was also on the floor, covered in blood, her face shattered and disfigured. It appeared none of them were alive. Overcome with shock, Tawny called emergency services with trembling hands and reported the scene. At that moment, Emma shuddered and emitted a loud groan. Police officers and paramedics immediately arrived on the scene and found a weak pulse in all 3 victims, quickly beginning resuscitation. The scene was horrifying. No one understood what kind of beast could do this to a young woman and her children. But saving their lives was the priority, so all efforts were focused on getting the victims to the nearest hospital for assistance. From the outset, paramedics expressed doubts about whether the victims could be brought to the hospital alive. However, all three were still alive when they arrived at the medical facility. They were diagnosed with open head injuries, severe brain damage, and extensive blood loss. No prognosis was given by the doctors, but they did the best they could. Max and Saga were in critical condition. Even if their lives could be saved, it was unlikely they would ever breathe on their own. Emma's condition was assessed as very serious but stable. The young woman was put into a medically induced coma and connected to life support machines, hoping her body could cope. While doctors fought for the lives of the victims, forensic experts worked at the scene, trying to find clues and reconstruct the crime. Inside the house, chaos reigned. Scattered belongings, blood on the floor and walls. Unfortunately, the medics had left behind a lot of clutter, moving items around to access the victims. The floor where Emma, Max, and Saga lay was trampled on, and now the medics had to figure out which footprints belonged to them and if the perpetrator's prints were there. Remarkably, the intruder had massacred the victims in at most 13 minutes, as the last message from Emma to her sister was sent at 07:07 p.m. And at 07:20 p.m., a call was made to the police by a frightened Tawny. The brutality with which the perpetrator massacred the victims indicated a personal motive and deep dislike. The weapon of the crime was a blunt, heavy object, presumably a hammer, but it was not found at the scene, suggesting the perpetrator took it with them. From the start, Tawny was the prime suspect. He was not married to Emma and was not the father of her children, leading to speculation that a domestic quarrel could have turned into a bloodbath. The grief-stricken man was immediately questioned, but had an ironclad alibi. Firstly, he was indeed late at work, confirmed by his boss and colleagues, and secondly, at the time of the brutal massacre, he was walking down the street, caught on CCTV cameras. Nevertheless, a detailed statement was taken from Tawny, as he might have seen or heard something important that could help in the investigation. However, he could not remember anything specific. Everything seemed normal until he saw the mess and bodies lying on the floor. The only thing that alerted him was the unlocked front door, indicating Emma might have let the criminal in. After questioning, Tawny was released. By then, he had already informed Emma's family, and her parents immediately rushed to Aruga from Stockholm. Together, they went straight to the hospital, but on the way, they learned from the news on the radio that Max and Saga had died of their injuries without regaining consciousness. The new suspect was Emma's ex-husband and father of the children, Nicklas. The couple had been divorced for more than a year and parted peacefully. However, they constantly quarreled, sued for custody of the children, and Nicklas even threatened his ex-spouse, which she reported to the police. It seemed that everything fit. After the breakup, the young woman took the children to another city to be with her new partner. Their father, not having achieved custody through the court and harboring hostility toward Emma, decided to take a desperate step in a fit of rage and harmed the children. Nicklas was immediately tracked down and taken into custody, but he seemed crushed by the news of Max and Saga's deaths, sobbing and constantly asking if there was some mistake. When he was charged with what had happened, he was at first stunned and then began shouting that he would never hurt his children, whom he adored. When asked where Nicklas was at the time of the crime, he replied that he was away in another city on business for a day. It sounded strange, but soon his alibi was confirmed. The man was indeed 120 miles away from the crime scene when someone was massacring his ex-wife and children. Searching for clues and fearing for the life of the sole survivor, forensic investigators remained active at the scene, trying to find any evidence or traces of the attacker. The perpetrator had obviously worn gloves and left no fingerprints. Identifying the shoe prints was much more difficult because the house was visited by a dozen doctors who rendered assistance and took out the victims. It was necessary to collect all the footprints and determine which ones did not belong to the medics, Nicklas, or the victims themselves. law enforcers feared that the criminal, having learned that Emma had survived, might sneak into the hospital to finish what he had started. After all, she was a crucial witness, and if she regained consciousness and could testify, she would certainly give him away. Therefore, a 24-hour guard was posted outside young Emma's room. At the same time, neighbors were interviewed in search of possible witnesses. One woman recalled that around 5 in the evening, a stranger in black clothes was walking around Emma and Nicklas's house. She thought it was strange, but could not see the person's face because it was hidden by a hood. However, the neighbor suggested that it could be a girl because the figure was short and fragile. The same figure in black clothes and with a hood on their head was also captured by a street surveillance camera located on a store a couple of minutes' walk from the crime scene. It appeared to law enforcement that the person in the video was a short, frail-looking girl. But who was she? And why would she wish harm on Emma and her children? The recording was shown to Nicklas to find out his opinion about who the stranger could be and whether he had any assumptions. From the first frames, his face changed, turning pale. He then said that it could be his ex-girlfriend, 31-year-old Christina Schurer, although he could not be sure. Christina Schurer, Nicklas's former sweetheart, was born in Hanover, Germany in 1977. When she was still a child, her father left the family and practically stopped communicating with her, which negatively affected her mental state and behavior. The girl grew up willful and purposeful, but had a complex character. As a teenager, she went to the United States on an exchange program and lived in New York for several years. She received a good education in history and archaeology, traveled extensively throughout Europe, and took part in excavations and expeditions. In the summer of 2006, she went to Greece, to the island of Crete, where she got a job as a tour guide at a popular hotel. In July, 26-year-old Nicklas came on vacation and immediately attracted Christina. He also liked the smart, interesting, and educated girl with whom he had an affair from the first days of acquaintance. Christina was 29 years old at that time, but the small age difference did not embarrass the couple. Their connection lasted for a week while Nicklas was vacationing at the hotel, and after his departure, they continued to communicate by phone and correspond on the internet. A few months later, Christina came to Hellberg in Sweden and literally asked to stay at his house. Even then, such behavior seemed too intrusive and tactless to Nicklas. When Christina offered him a weekend trip to the mountains, he refused and sincerely hoped it would be the last time they met. But Christina continued to call, write, and insist on a new meeting. In January 2007, during a phone conversation, Nicklas told Christina that everything was over between them and they should not meet again. But Christina pretended not to hear it. She continued to call, asking to visit him and inviting him to go on vacation with her. In the spring of 2007, Christina returned to Sweden and began to stalk her former boyfriend, Nicklas. She tried to persuade him to resume their relationship, even though he honestly admitted that he was already dating someone else. Christina claimed she had left some of her belongings at his house during her previous visit and needed to retrieve them. Nicklas agreed, but as soon as they entered his home, she attempted to seduce him. When he firmly refused, she ominously said he would regret it. 3 months later, Christina returned again, apologized for her previous behavior, and once more tried to convince Nicklas to reconcile. He rejected her, and later that evening, she called him, claiming she had swallowed pills because she couldn't live without him. Alarmed, Nicklas called an ambulance and also contacted her family, advising them to seek psychiatric help for Christina. After receiving care at the hospital, her mother took her to a psychiatric facility where she stayed for over a month. However, the treatment had little effect, and Christina remained obsessed with Nicklas, constantly thinking about how to win him back and devising new reasons to meet him. In October 2007, Christina decided to move to Sweden and settled in the suburbs of Stockholm, sharing an apartment with another girl. She resumed her pursuit of Nicklas, and when she finally managed to meet him, she claimed she had given birth to a son by him, but had given the child to a foster family. Nicklas was shocked by this news and was curious about the timing. The last time they had been intimate was over a year ago, and they had met 3 more times since then without any signs of pregnancy. Christina responded evasively and kept adding new details each time. In January 2008, after numerous unsuccessful attempts to meet with Nicklas, Christina wrote him a message stating that their son had been diagnosed with a hereditary disease and they needed to go to Germany together to see him. She added that the child's adoptive father would contact him with the details. At this time, Nicklas and Emma were in the process of moving to a new home, and Emma knew the whole story. She believed Christina was trying to lure Nicklas to Germany and that no son existed. When Nicklas received a call from a man claiming to be the adoptive father, he asked questions about the child's birth details. The caller became irritated, avoided answering, and eventually hung up. This confirmed Nicklas's suspicion that Christina had fabricated the story and enlisted someone to play along. Upon learning this convoluted story, detectives quickly located Christina's address. Her roommate told them Christina had packed her things the day before and said she was returning to Germany. A check confirmed that Christina had left the country, so the Swedish police sought help from their German counterparts to arrest her. On March 20th, a warrant was issued for her arrest. When Christina was arrested, she claimed there had been a mistake and that she had nothing to do with the crime. However, after being taken to Sweden on March 29th, she requested a meeting with Nicklas, which was denied. She remained calm, but persistently asked to see or call him again. Christina's rented apartment was thoroughly searched, and her phone and laptop were seized for inspection. Investigators examined all her clothes but found no traces of blood. By then, they had determined which of the bloody shoe prints at the crime scene did not belong to the medics or family members. The prints were from athletic shoes, and the tread pattern indicated the brand and style. The shoe size matched the suspects, though Christina claimed she had never owned such a model. Her roommate, however, identified the shoes as belonging to Christina. More disturbing evidence was found on Christina's laptop. It contained numerous photos of Nicklas, both alone and with his new girlfriend. In a separate folder with a disturbing label, there were pictures of Emma and her children, which Christina had copied from Emma's social media page. Each photo was captioned with insulting, threatening, and frightening remarks. The search history revealed queries on how to commit murder without leaving traces, how to hide evidence, and how to divert suspicion. Investigators also found a floor plan of Emma and Nicklas's new home and notes detailing Nicklas's work schedule and the family's daily routines. Emma's condition eventually stabilized, with her vital signs showing gradual improvement. By the end of March, doctors decided it was time to begin waking her from the medically induced coma. When she awoke, she was still unable to speak due to the breathing tube, but recognized her family members in the room. However, she appeared confused about her situation and why she was in the hospital. Once Emma was able to speak clearly, the police interviewed her, but initially withheld the news about her children's deaths. Emma had no memory of the tragic events and believed she'd been in a car accident. She repeatedly asked about her children, eager to know if they were okay. At first, she received vague responses, but eventually her family and medical team decided to tell her the truth. When informed about her children's murders, Emma became hysterical and had to be sedated. When she woke up, she didn't recall the conversation and again asked about her children. This cycle of being informed and then forgetting continued for several weeks, with Emma's mind repeatedly rejecting the harsh reality. A month later, Emma was taken to the scene of the crime, accompanied by medical personnel. Once inside the house, her memory suddenly returned. She recounted how she had been texting with her sister, setting the table while her children played nearby, when there was a knock on the door. She opened it to see a short, dark figure of a woman. As she asked what the woman wanted, she felt a sharp pain and blacked out. The figure then entered the house, and Emma, with her last bit of strength, tried to stop her to protect her children, but collapsed in the hallway, where she was attacked again. Christina continued to deny her involvement in the crime. The murder weapon was never found, and most of the evidence was circumstantial, giving her a chance to avoid conviction. However, Christina's roommate revealed that a hammer had gone missing from her toolkit around the time of the crime. The investigation determined that the size and configuration of that brand of tool matched the suspected murder weapon, though this was also circumstantial. Surveillance footage from a suburban bus station showed Christina visiting the area 3 times in the week before the murders. Christina couldn't explain her frequent visits, and she also couldn't explain her internet searches on how to cover up a crime or her collection of photos of Emma and her children. The trial began on July 29, 2008, with Christina facing charges of double murder with particular cruelty and attempted murder. Her behavior in the courtroom was strange. She smiled and waved at the audience and laughed when shown gruesome footage of the crime scene. This led some to question her sanity, but a psychiatric evaluation confirmed she was sane and fully aware of her actions. Emma testified during the trial and fainted upon seeing Christina. After regaining consciousness, she recalled everything and identified Christina as the last person she saw before losing consciousness on the day of the crime. Despite efforts by the defense to prove Christina's innocence, the jury unanimously found her guilty on all counts. She was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole and ordered to pay $20,000 in compensation to Emma. No evidence was found that Christina had ever been pregnant or had a child with Nicklas. As for Emma, her recovery was long and difficult, but Nicklas stayed by her side. They married in the summer of 2010 and are now raising 2 children together, who are aware of the tragic fate of their older siblings. Thanks for tuning in. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more intriguing stories and updates. See you next time.